This is the Disturbing the Peace podcast with your hosts, Justin Lanero and Reuben Stanford.
Hello and welcome to the Disturbing the Peace podcast. I'm your host, Justin Lanero, on Twitter at Justin Lanero, along with my co-host, Mr. Reuben Stanford, at Real Sports Porn on Twitter, and our executive producer, my boy Mitchell Hurd.
What up?
What's the deal? Rube,
So good.
So what's up, man? We got a lot of shit to talk about, and this is going to be a show where, we shoot from the hip. We're going to talk about shit that we grew up doing, seeing, living, mistakes, positive things, current events, and I'm really excited to work with you gentlemen on this project. So let's get going. I mean, there's some shit going on in the news right now. First and foremost, something that hit home for me the other day was the owner of the New England Patriots, Bob Kraft. This is a guy that's net worth is around $6 billion, has built an empire up on Mitch. You've seen the highs and the lows with this organization. Yeah. And,
for sure.
He gets bagged in a prostitution ring watched by the FBI for over a year, 2 occasions. They claim they got him on video camera. So one would think, you got that kind of dough, you can do whatever you want. But it's a bigger issue than that, because it's a sex trafficking ring, which means these people, modern day slavery, if you will, being held against their will, which is really some deep shit, man. And it's repulsive. And one revelation that I've noticed before I get your opinion on it, Rube, is the media around here, the main sports channel around here in Boston, 98.5, the Sports Hub, was like, we're not talking about that because they're the Patriots' number one fit, so that no caller can talk about it. So you're kind of like, it's almost like communism, where you're blocked out. Nobody is able to give their input on the major network about how they're feeling, good, bad, in between about this. And
wow.
If you were to bet tonight, it's probably going to be like Jim Irsay, the owner of the Colts a couple years ago, suspended for 6 games, $500,000 fine. How the fuck do you suspend an owner for 6 games? Okay, you can go watch it. You're outside of Boston. That's
exactly. You can't stay in your booth tonight.
So what's your take on that, man? Because it's obviously bigger than prostitution, but my mind is wandering. Like, what the fuck is he doing in a strip mall? A dingy operation, throwing him like $50 to some.
Right.
I mean,
like for me as a Jet fan, I applaud Robert for getting his old ass caught up in a fucking prostitution sting. I gotta say that. I'm a Jet fan. So I'm sure there's gonna be like people are gonna make like a Hajj down there to that fucking cesspool of a establishment to see where old Bob Kraft was out there trying to cop some street meat. I just think that overall though, like, it just speaks to the greater issue of power and people of dominance and people that have a lot of money. They use people that are the most vulnerable in society. They use them as entertainment. That's just simply what it is. And Robert Kraft is no different than any other billionaire that has found himself in a precarious situation because his own arrogance and ego probably led him to say, you know what, if I want $50 ass tonight, and I want to get down here in the gully in the streets, then I'm going to do it, and there's going to be no repercussions. And I could care less about where these individuals came from, but they're here right now for my entertainment,
That's heavy, man. And that is some real shit right there, man, because it's true. It's arrogance. It is, it's probably a little bit of, he's kind of off the wall. I feel like he's impaired every time I see him, but it just goes to show you, man, we live in a sick world. And I think, a focal point of this podcast, what we're doing is we're going to try to breed positivity. A lot of the negative shit that we are going to talk negative shit because it's thrown in our faces, but we can dissect that and have our own spins on this. Look, another dude in the news, my mind's telling me no, but my body's telling me yes, girl.
Yeah.
Listen, R. Kelly is no doubt one of the best R&B musicians of our time, and I feel like we've been hearing shit about him pissing on people and all this other nasty shit for about 20 years now, and finally, after this documentary on whatever the fuck, the Hallmark station or whatever it came out on, they did a segment and put him on blast, and it was like, wow, we're dealing with an animal. Well, congratulations. It's only taken you 20 fucking years to discover this. $1 million bail, Rube.
Yeah,
What's your take?
$1 million bail. I mean, listen, fucking Rob has been making hits, like you said. We love his music, but you know, there's an issue that people in the community that has pretty much insulated this gentleman. One of the things that we know about people of color, we don't know how to handle mental illness, and we do not know how to handle when individuals that we revere and we hold up to be like icons and gods. What do we do with them when they become bigger than life? How do we sit down? Once again, it's how do we sit down and we deal with them as men and just recognize that, you know, listen, R. Kelly had a great job. He could sing and he could entertain us. But if he's that guy that's out there taking little girls and putting them in the studio and brainwashing them and then peeing on them and humiliating them, I mean, that's just, you know, he is what he is. He's a beast. I mean, he shouldn't be walking around. He shouldn't be able to go out there and make money off of it and sing songs in Africa. Do you have your papers? Do you want to come home with me? Do you have your shots? Like this guy is out of his rabbit ass mind, you know. And what we do oftentimes is we protect these guys. You know, we tried to protect Bill Cosby. There was a huge push to protect Bill Cosby. There's a huge push for 25 years to over 20 years to pretty much protect R. Kelly. We knew who he was. He told us who he was in his music. And we still, you know, we opted out as a society to say, you know what? He's still serving a purpose. You know, he's giving us that hot shit.
He's providing quality entertainment, and that sells. So we're going to go ahead and give him a free pass. You know, Mitch, what's your take, man? I mean, you've been in the music game for a minute. I mean, what's your take on a guy like R. Kelly?
Yeah, no doubt, man. I mean, the guy was gifted with immense talent, the gift to not only sing and perform, but write music in a way that no one was even thinking about music at the time that the Chocolate Factory came out. I mean, no one was thinking along those lines. And he was an innovator, but you look at some of the most like outwardly talented people that push the limits of human talents and capability, like Michael Jackson or Prince. I mean, they all had their demons, and it was like when you think about it,
maybe Bob Kraft.
Maybe Bob Kraft is another guy, you know, who's excelled in business and has obviously excelled in sports success, you know, in a very short period of time, had a meteoric rise to become like the most dominant sports franchise basically we've ever seen. You know, who knows if this is their way to just like, you know, either gain or give up control. Like, you know, the whole sort of motif here is mental illness, and clearly these are sort of offshoots of some form of mental illness. There's just no getting around that. It's not normal behavior, you know, behavior of equality among humans. So,
but my thing is this: why do we protect these motherfuckers? Like, if you have a creepy fucking uncle, right? Yeah. And why do we go in our communities and people have creepy uncles in their family, and when the kids are over, you got a family event, you know, everybody's watching their kid. Don't go sit on Uncle Johnny's lap. Yeah. Make sure you don't sit on his lap. You know, everybody's watching and they're focused and they're watching the kids. And when the kid is out of sight, they're like, oh shit, where's Uncle Johnny? Where's the kid? Because people understand what Uncle Johnny is. He's a family member, but he's a beast, and we know he has issues.
Yeah, and the only thing he brings to Christmas dinner is his appetite.
Right, exactly. He brings his appetite to dinner. But then we watch Uncle Johnny go out there, get a wife. She may have kids. And nobody stops in the family and goes, holy shit, Uncle Johnny's got a wife and she's got kids. And we know who he is.
Yeah.
You don't go and report Uncle Johnny.
Front.
Like, fuck it. You know what? Let's put all the cards on the table. Let's call him what he is. He's a pedophile. Yep. Why are we protecting this guy?
All right. And, you know, one thing real quick, Reuben, I don't want to interject, but just to keep things, what's on my head, I got to One thing I've discovered, and I'm going to, large part of why I'm doing this podcast with you guys is to learn and stuff like that. But I mean, from what I've gathered, I think mostly in the black community, and of course I can't speak from it, but and definitely maybe in our age bracket, was what goes on. A lot of people in the Northeast, well, it doesn't matter where you're from. What goes on in the home front stays at home, and you don't go and tell anybody about it. Whether a kid's getting diddled at home, and I think that's just a general. It was a general rule of thumb, and it has been for a long time. What happens in this household? What happens in this family? Whether the dad's a drunk, it stays in this house. You don't tell your friends. Don't tell anybody what's going on in this house. Right. So nobody knows who Johnny is. He hide behind that false front, and it plays into his favor because he sets up shop like he's a regular Joe, and he's a contributing member of society. Behind the curtains, he's a manipulative monster. So
we're aiding them. We're giving them everything we need. That individual needs for a perfect hideout, a way to keep his cool, keep his cover. His family, well, he must be okay. His family is inviting me to dinner, and he's here. He has a loving family, or she has a wonderful family. But everybody knows that sometimes these things are demons and secrets within a family, and we are not honest. There's so much shame associated with having an individual in the family that might have issues. So when we talk about people with issues, R. Kelly clearly had issues. His brothers had issues. He had been molested himself. And individuals that are oftentimes the most vulnerable also go out and they perform, they reenact the pain that they suffer. They reenact on other people. And it's no different.
Look at Michael Jackson. Look at Michael Jackson. His father, from what we can gather, was an absolute animal. The kid never had. He was an adult child. Michael Jackson had it all, but he saw a lot of shit when they were in the Jackson 5. Jackson was doing running brothels in front of these kids, and then they turned to be real fucked up individuals. It's a screwed up world. We know that. While we're on the topic of mental illness, I think it's a topic that we can talk about over and over and over again because it doesn't get large. Look, the fact of the matter is, in this country, more than 50% of the people have untreated mental illness, and they're not being covered. And that essentially means, in layman's terms, they're integrated with normal people and define normal. What's normal, right? But, as an alcoholic, I can say this, and I go to hella meetings to get better, one day at a time, and I've heard and I've seen it all within those walls of Alcoholics Anonymous, because that's why I show up. I try to get better. I got to hear good stories. I got to hear bad stories to keep me away from a drink one day at a time. But let me say this. If you take an alcoholic or a drug addict and you culminate that with any type of mental illness, schizophrenia, bipolar disorder, anxiety, and a lot of people have, different illnesses, and none of us are normal. Right. And mix that up with a drug or a drinking problem, and you have a tornado essentially with legs integrated in society, bumping into us at the grocery store, and our priorities as a country are fucked up. And I'm not saying put these people away. I'm saying get them the proper help, because it's they're danger to society, they're a danger to themselves, and we're talking about walls and building walls and all this other bullshit. Yeah. It's like, why can't we worry about shit like we're talking about? Tonight, and I'm not saying, it's going to cure R. Kelly, Bob Kraft, Michael Jackson, but when you talk about more than 50% of the population, that's a serious number.
I mean, you're absolutely right. I mean, one of the first things that we should stop and think about, why is there so much shame associated with mental health? And when you put people in a position where they feel ashamed, we already know that people will oftentimes isolate themselves. They'll isolate themselves and they'll cut themselves off from the rest of the world, and they will suffer in silence. And that's the worst thing that an individual that has any mental health issues should do.
For sure.
And oftentimes, like, you'll hear me speak from a point of view from what I see in the community and what I've seen in the court system. I've watched the mental hygiene unit, health hygiene units bring in scores of people that simply just either they're self-medicating, they find themselves abusing some substance to try to find a way to end the suffering or try to level out their own chemistry that is calling or needing some type of balance. There's always a person that you see moving around and they're out of balance and they're not moving at the same beat as the rest of the community. It's not because they're trying to be different, but oftentimes parents haven't, when they were young, they refuse to put their egos to the side and help get their children diagnosed early. I mean, you and I, we have children. I think it's important that we talk as fathers to say that, hey, if you notice something in your child early on, what is the harm in getting them the diagnosis that they need so that they can live their best life? That's the bottom line goal. Like
a lot of pride.
Right. Put your pride to the side. Of course, every child is born into a family with all the hope in the world, and then you start realizing at first you're excited that they have the 10 toes and 10 fingers, and their eyes are working, their ears are working. You're just elated.
Surface level shit.
You cannot determine when you look at a child what their orientation may be and whether or not their mental health status is going to be at a level where they're going to be able to be healthy and strong in society with a strong self-image and move forward. And then in the Black community, we go back to what we talked about earlier. Oftentimes people don't talk. And men, we're not talking. As fathers, we're not talking. Or we turn to examples. So in the Black community, we'll turn to the church. And the church offers the therapy. But the church isn't equipped to identify what schizophrenia looks like or what depression looks like and why is it starting? Where's that self-image? Where's that hurt that child is feeling? And I mean, it's crazy to see kids come into the courts, in restraints, and they're just embattled and just pain inside of them. I mean, it's one of the most heartbreaking, heart-wrenching things to see. But you also feel that at least when you're watching a child get the treatment, get the medication, which is a taboo in the Black community, is like, oh, you put that kid. I mean, because oftentimes, yes, racism, our societal racism, institutions sometimes can push children of color towards medication when there's no need. Right. And that's why you should always be able to go out and feel comfortable getting second opinions and try to find a way to get the services that your child may need.
Right, and get it, nip it in the bud early. And I have 2 toddlers, and they were in early intervention, which is a transition period into the public school system, the big leagues, right? So when they're like 2 and 3, they get extra help if something's diagnosed, if there's a speech delay, if there's an impediment, if they may or may not be on the spectrum. You get them there early to get diagnosed and looked at by an occupational therapist. This way, you're prepared for the worst. And what I've gathered is time heals a lot of these things. We're quick to speculate. We're quick to Google this, and oh my God, my kid's got autism. He's screwed up. And then once they get to the classroom setting, they're integrated. They're mingling, and then time just kind of has its way of making these kids normal. But you're right, Rue. You nip it in the butt, or you try to nip it in the butt early. Now, but what happens for the poor bastards that don't have health insurance and you don't have the means to get shit right? I mean, Hurricane Katrina, look at people. Why didn't they flee? Well, a lot of these people didn't have the means to flee New Orleans, so the shit hit the fan, and they ended up dying, or they lost everything.
Absolutely.
Hindsight is 20/20, but you're absolutely right. I mean, if something's going on, and who's to say that if R. Kelly's parents or a parent didn't, get him checked out early, or I mean, let's face it, there is evil, right? There's evil, and I think a guy like Bill Cosby might be evil. Aaron Hernandez, I don't know. He lost his dad, Mitch. Remember when I lost my dad? We were 16, 17 years old. I didn't go out killing motherfuckers. I wasn't the straightest arrow. I was disconnected from the world, but nip shit in the bud early, or try to at the very least, because I think you're right, Rue. That's hella important. Listen, let's talk about you brought it to my attention, and this is important to you, Reuben. So I want to ask you, this shit with the Gucci and Burberry apparel. I mean, these are high-end lines of clothing, and I've done my research and looked around, and it's not something I'm going to speak a ton on because I don't know enough, but I know what the fuck the clothes look like with the noose and I'm not, I mean, I can't laugh. You would think it would be as basic to like a guy like Robert Kraft. Like, what the fuck is Rob Kraft doing at this place? Why in the fuck would a clothing line even go near a noose and something that resembles a black face in this day and ever, but particularly today?
Yeah.
Why would you do that?
That's preposterous. That's the only word that actually exists in the human language. It's preposterous.
I mean, Rue, what's your take, man? I know this is something you dropped on me a couple times,
I think it's an example of where, industries, the fashion industry, they took a bygone era of slavery and they literally thought it was fashionable to reintroduce it to a younger generation, and how do you keep systems in place? How do you keep thought process and paradigms in place? What you do is you bring the image forward, we reintroduce it, we package it and market it for a new generation so that it never dies. I mean, it's crazy to believe.
But why? Why would you? Why? And I'm preposterous. But what? I mean, you mean to tell me all these rich motherfuckers at these corporations said, that might be a good. That's a great idea. Let's do that with social media and all this racist tension shit going on like worldwide. Who the fuck is going to buy it in the first place? But I mean, what's the basis behind it? Is it like evil?
But if you buy it, if it maintains, or rather, if it loses that negative meaning, then it can gain steam. Like the swastika will never lose its meaning for people, for Jewish people in our society. It will never lose its meaning. But if we can make a blackface doll kind of cool again, we can cool this noose up. And if black people aren't, or people of color aren't diligent and stay on top of these things, then it becomes cool. And you can actually, I think you can actually desensitize us, a whole nation to treat people of color as, one news article may read, young thug attempts to rob a store. Another news article will say, young teen arrested for allegedly robbing a store. I mean, the narrative is in the hands of media. It's in the hands of corporations. And they determine and they condition society. And this is, to me, another form of conditioning society. And my problem with it all is that we have oftentimes a huge need, or we ask for diversity in these rooms, in these fashion houses, in corporations, or at the big table. We need more diversity. But when you get diversity in that, at that particular space, does the person that's there have the strength to speak to power? Because if they don't have the strength to speak to power, you could be a person of color. But if you're trying to actually go against the grain and make waves, then you're just skinfolk, but you're not kinfolk. You understand what I'm saying?
Right.
So black people that get into spaces, and they oftentimes do not want to be the person that's perceived as the angry Negro. I don't want to be the angry black man, he's emotional. When you're passionate about something, all of us, when we're passionate, we get excited. We're talking about the union issue, we get excited. We're passionate, but we've put the shackles on ourselves. Society has also put these shackles on us, mental shackles, to say, don't even think about stepping out of line on this topic. You will be perceived as just another grumbling, complaining Negro. And, why do you bring race into everything? Now, if you got to live with that kind of pressure and you're not built for that, then you can sit in a room and you can okay a noose sweatshirt, you know? So, I mean, my challenge is when I'm in this position, when I'm in a position to at least speak to power, I feel like you just have to, no matter what the situation is. And it doesn't have to just be a race issue. It can be a human rights issue. It can be speaking up for a young girl that you see at the nail salon and you're like, God, she looks a little scared and she looks like she might be underage and she's working at the nail salon. Maybe somebody should put in a call for that establishment to be checked out.
Right.
You know, it's imperative that we all have eyes, we all see things, but do we engage or do we walk around minding our business? If we're going to be a society of minding our business, then it's the opposite of what disturbing the peace is meant to do, which is to make people get used to the idea that being uncomfortable is not a bad place. So I want you to get being uncomfortable.
Yep. Think outside the box. Don't be a conformist. Do a little bit of critical thinking. You know, soak something in today is as simple as what I said about Bob Kraft and the anchor station around here that said you can't have any callers talking about the Bob Kraft. People want to be sheltered from what's real, you know, and that's when you hear people say, "Are you woke?" Or, you know, we got a lot of dumb people in this country, and all they really go by is what's shown on the television. Those are their outlets. You can't. It's in front of you. It's on blast, so you don't really have time to dig in the trenches and look around.
Like we gotta have a stay woke. How woke are you concept on the show? Like sure. I would love to get as many people to, you know, hit us up and give us what's their most woke experience. Like when they would walk on the street or in the elevator and they were like, damn, I've heard about it, but now I saw it firsthand.
Yeah, we're going to talk about a ton of shit on this show, you know, and everything from black women and natural hair to sex toys to 90s hip hop and rap. Look, let's talk real quick before we wrap up tonight, because we're going to do a shitload of shows. I know you wanted to talk about that other dude in Chicago, Josie Smollett there, you know, and that's another topic.
Like Trevor Noah.
I don't know who the
Trevor Noah said,
you know.
Josie.
I don't know who the fuck these people, you know, I haven't watched a show in a minute, you know, but I know a little bit about it in terms of, you know, you faked something and now they bagged him with found, you know, just a racial thing, just one of these things. I don't know if he was trying to beef up his career, which he's an underpaid actor. Like, what's your take on that? It's just a sad, piss poor mistake, and you got to feel bad for the guy. I don't know that he should be exiled. It's a stupid thing to do.
Listen, Jussie Smollett he put himself out there. You know, this is a big time lie. I mean, we've seen this. He was really a reflection of what we do in this country. I mean, all we do is lie. We got the president lying left and right to us. People in Congress, you know, people are skeptical about their politicians. I mean, so it's not surprising. It feels like we live in a society that right now everything feels like a soap opera. So for Jussie Smollett to come from a soap opera and, you know, have a hoax, I mean, I thought it was I thought a couple of things. I thought it was possible that in this country there could be a hate crime on an individual that of color, because we know that's just pretty much Chicago has that racial divide. That's possible. But there was too many areas that sound shaky. And, you know, one, I mean, I personally feel like I wish the media would stop saying that they're two Nigerian brothers. It's almost like they almost want to use an Igbo or Yoruba accent or something, or come up with some type of way to make sure that these brothers are described as African. Like, these are two beefed up, brolic black dudes from the south side of Chicago. So, you know, and if they are Nigerian, who the hell is scamming a Nigerian? That's my thing. Like, you're not scamming Nigerians into pulling off this caper. I mean, what it is Jussie Smollett lied. It plays back into what we were talking about with mental illness. It was a self-inflicted wound. It was almost like how Plaxico shot himself in the leg. He didn't hurt anybody.
He had on sweatpants, like a 5-pound gat was gonna hold up the nose at the club. His wife was a lawyer, I think I remember, but what a stupid ass mistake, man, that was.
Yeah. And these mistakes cost you. I mean, so, for the way I look at it is like, listen, this guy played on what we know to be a serious issue in this country, that race and hate and homophobia are real. Now that he betrayed the trust of the people in his community and communities that he represents. He betrayed their trust, and he misused police resources. But it also shows that a person can get pushed to the edge and people are vulnerable. And when you make a decision to try to pull off a hoax like this, you're not reaching out to enough good people. Like, you need good people in your corner. You need people you can go to. You need people that's going to keep you from talking about you went out there and you were jumped by black people. I mean, some white guys, and they scream, "MAGA's world, MAGA!" Stop with the bullshit. Like, let's get some help. If you're hurting and there's something inside that's hurting, allegedly you did this, whatever the case may be, and you're doubling down. That's the funny thing about Kraft as well. Like, Kraft is doubling down like I wasn't there. And Jussie Smollett went and did several interviews and cried and said, I fought fucking back. So if you guys think that told you that I didn't fight back, that part was a lie. Like, dude, contain your shit. And if you got some issues, come to the table. Have a strong community behind you. And, maybe dealing with the whole fame and maybe dealing with the lack of pay. There's no real reason for us to kind of like say, hey, Jussie deserves our sympathy. But what I will say is, if Jussie does any time, or if he does probation, if he gets probation, then, you got to set yourself up still for the major comeback. If there's one thing I know about looking at the penal system, it's just a stop. It's just like the game of Monopoly, bro.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. It really does.
Pay your fine, pay your debt to society, and come back out and get back to business. Get back to the business of living your life, and learn from your mistake. Get the help that you need.
Is that discouraging to you? Is that discouraging to both of you as black men, given all the racist stuff that goes on religiously that we hear about, and it's really ridiculous that we still have to go down this road. But for it to be a hoax, I mean, is that a kick in the poor guy that has actually had racial crimes done to him, and people think that he's full of shit and he's crying wolf, and then you got this dude acting like he's acting like an actor. That's what he knows how to do. He's an actor. So he tried to sell his bullshit, and it caught up to him. I mean, is that discouraging as black men to, like, damn, man, we're trying to make progress here. We're not trying to, go backwards. People can think we're full of shit with these allegations.
I mean, I used to feel that slave trauma, like, it's known. It is what it is. It's slave trauma. Black people experience this all the time when there's a major shooting. We finally kind of got out of the mass shootings. We know that's like white boy stuff. Like, we understand that the terrorism and things like that. Like, we feel like, we're pretty much certain that's a white gotten past that. But when we were growing up, like when I was growing up, like I remember my mom sitting in front of the television and praying, like, oh, please don't let it be a black guy, because it's going to set us back. Oh, but like, why are we carrying the weight of an entire, individually, why are you carrying the weight of an entire race on your back and on your shoulders? No one else does that. No one else is praying and wishing and hoping that when atrocities happen in the world, or if someone does something that's evil because it's pure evil, that is not connected or associated back to them individually. Like, we feel that type of weight, in the black community. And so when you see Jussie Smollett go out there, now you have a group of people that they say, yes, I recognize Jussie Smollett betrayed what I deemed to be something that was sacred, which was my trust, and that he wasn't going to go out there and say that somebody attacked him because he was black or attacked him because he was gay, and not betray that. But we saw Ryan Lochte do it at the Olympics. You know, we saw him make up a story about how he got jumped and jacked and whooped ass or whatever. And, you know, he went on 60 Minutes or he went on Good Morning America. He had his moment. We calmed him down. They gave him a little timeout, but he didn't do any jail time. And he was over in another country acting a fool and then came up with a story that he was attacked by some black guys. You know, so we've seen this before in our community, and we've also seen where it hasn't been made to be that big of a deal. We've also seen in our community, I'm not sure if you're familiar with Emmett Till, and Emmett Till was a black boy, was killed in like 1955, and this white woman, Carolyn Dunham, claimed that he and his friends had made some remarks and touched her at a store. Yep. And on her deathbed, she came back to say, you know what, she had made up the story. Now, meanwhile, of course, Emmett Till didn't get to live another day of his life. He was a 14-year-old boy that was murdered. So she was basically an accessory to murder. Mm-hmm. You know, so if we fast forward, when we find Nazis, if they're in Argentina, if they're hiding out in Pompano, you know, and they can be, you can corral their asses. We send them over and they're tried, and it doesn't matter if you're 90 years old with your long saggy balls. We're gonna fucking put you on trial and you're gonna serve some time. Mm-hmm. But with this lady, it was like, oh, well, you know, no, I would have preferred if somebody had came there and they had a dinner, a hospital arraignment had been performed. You know, so as far as like seeing people with these idea of hoax, I don't think it's anything new. I think the president also has created a climate where it's like, oh, you know, people are reaching for sensationalized stories, and we know, whereas we have watched over the last few years, that race, because we don't talk about race in this country, that the hate is real, that racism is real, and it is galvanizing and dividing us as a country, and people are choosing sides. And if you want to play the game of, you know what, I want to get my message out there, or you want to sensationalize a story like Jussie Smollett did, I'll just make up some shit. Here we go. Here's a guy that was obviously feeling vulnerable, feeling confused, or feeling just not seen and not heard, you know?
We before we wrap up, because we only got another minute, I want to tell you guys a quick story. Yep. I took the kids to a birthday party yesterday. All right, and it was the birthday parties. The times conflicted, but I had to go to two of them. One of them was in an upscale area where everybody's hair was done, and you know, you could, you know, it was just upscale. The people that were there they had money, and then I threw them in the car so I could get to Easton's classmates' party, and it was in the teeth of the ghetto. It was in the projects, and the lights were off during the party because they wanted to save money, and it, you know, and I had an appreciation of the you can only have one slice of pizza, and I sent you that picture, bro, about with Easton. His best friend it was her party. He was the only person from the class that showed up, and he was following around like a puppy dog the whole time. Now she is African American. He is, you know, biracial. But the point is, this age, those kids don't see any of this racial shit, and you know, that's a beautiful thing to watch, because there's just none of that was occurring. And I found it fascinating that I was at one party, and then the second party was just completely two different sides of the world. And we had the time of our lives. And, you know, it really made me think. It's like, you look at these kids walking around, and it's just all happiness. It's all love. There's no divide. There's none of this talk about hoaxes and racism. It's all love. I think I captioned that picture real like, take me back, baby. You know, he's looking at her like, you know, what's your next move? She's got her little tiara on, and just a beautiful thing to watch, man. And you know, in this racist shit, you know, it starts, I think, at home. And I think, you know, there's been points in my life where I've been ignorant as fuck. And I'm really working on being a better man. And I think that a show like this, you know, with a childhood friend of mine, in the background. It's going to be a large part of the show. And you, Rue, you become very special, very quick in my life, and I appreciate you. It's going to give me insight. It's going to give me perspective. It's going to give me the ability to grow as a man, an individual. And that's what this is all about, man. Learning, growing, gaining perspective, trying to do the next right thing. And then hopefully the people that listen to this podcast, which should be available everywhere, Mitch, right, in the upcoming weeks, they'll grab something. And for me, like an AA meeting, there's 1 million AA meetings, right? There's 1,000 in Eastern Massachusetts. And you might not agree with everything that goes on for that hour in those meetings. And you might think the place smells like piss and the coffee sucks in this back room church. But if you grab a sliver or a slice from every single meeting that you go to, somebody says something that resonates. Now, after it'll be 6 years, April 2nd, God willing, I got an arsenal of shit that I've learned about sobriety and staying away from the drink one day at a time. And I think this show will provide that type of weaponry for people to have a better day, to become a better person, to help one another, and to laugh as well. So,
brother, this is an opportunity where we get to show love. Like,
no doubt.
I'm from Bed-Stuy, I'm from Brooklyn, you're from Boston. Listen, man, we came together, and this is just love. The two of us being able to talk out here, give it to the people, give them an understanding that we're beyond that. And what we don't agree on or what we don't see eye to eye on, it's all good. It's just the fact that, to be able to talk, to be seen, to be heard. Let's everyone recognize and go out and make a difference and see somebody. You and I are making a bigger impact in the world with just being able to talk to one another and go out and share our thoughts with people.
Absolutely.
Big corporations or all of the superstars. Like, it's the connection that regular people have every day.
Absolutely.
And to say, hey, yo, bro, hey, ma'am, sis, I see you. I recognize you. You're not invisible. So to the people out there, we have fun. I'm loving it.
No doubt.
Let's keep it rolling, baby.
No doubt. And we'll get, next episode, we'll have a bunch of different issues, and we're going to touch on sports. This is not a sports show, but we will have sports involved. In fact, some sponsorships potentially coming. And Mitch is a fit man, and I think that there's room for this show to have a...
he's a what kind of man? He's a fit man?
He is fit. And he's spiritually fit as well. I can guarantee you that. I mean, but implementing some type of health.
And don't forget, we're going to have that reminisce. We're going to have that hip hop segment, reminisce.
For days. Mitch will be. Oh, Mitch, I can see you now, bro, in that old tracker. Just bob in your head, and
zero bass, all treble, man.
It was all treble, but it was all love too. Then
6 watt radio.
That's right.
Yeah,
it was.
It was beautiful. All right. Well, this is a wrap.